Welcome back, friends. Welcome back to the homestead. It's the middle of summer, although I think the weather didn't get the memo. We've had the coldest and wettest June possibly on record. But anyway, you've seen in the previous video, I built this deck here, and essentially I need to build some furniture for it. I need to build a garden table for it, and possibly some kind of bench thing. It's all about how much material I've got left over of these decking boards. I over ordered anyway, but certainly got enough for a table. Maybe I got enough for a nice, and seats, benches next to it, but a corner bench I'm thinking as well, maybe. So let's go to the workshop and get started on that.
Okay, so basically I did do a design in Blender, in CAD. This is the kind of design I went for. I won't be doing the benches. I guess the question is, do I stick to the design or do I do something different? Well, you will see as the video runs.
I remember when I did the deck, I made a list and roughly separated bits out into sizes. So there's sort of, most of them are 190. I think when I cut, the biggest stretch was 190, left the cut off. There's what kind of one, and depending on where the knots were, depending on it, decided where I cut the piece of decking. So that's why some are small. So most of them are like 190. And some are the smallest ones, which are here, are like 170, 160, and these are 190. Now I want to make a table that's about, I think I've probably already said, 2 meters roughly wide and about 80, 90 a meter. Well, 2 meters long, 80, 90 centimeters wide. So what's that, 3 feet? So now I just need to find the bits that are flat and about 190, and then I'll cut them precisely, and I'll check for things like knots, which I know gives character and feature, but it also might give it, well, that doesn't matter, that's on the bottom, but it might give a problem later on. So according to my list, there are 12 bits I found. So what I need to do now is just do a visual check, and well, there's two things really. One is some obvious visual defects, or are they cupped? That's good. Looks okay. Depends how picky I want to be, really. There's a black mark on that. I don't know where that's from. Some kind of stain. Don't know. The main thing is that they're not cupped, I think, really. Some visual stuff I can work with. That's good. It's possibly a bit cupped. Okay, after some adjustment, we're back with the table. It's not perfect, but it's a bit better. do want them. I just want to see how they look. Okay, I've just been in to have a cup of tea and come out and, well, I've had a chance to have a think. So what the plan is the ends, there'll be two more pieces, one this side, one this side. They will be full stretch. So the end pieces will be just the width. There'll be some gaps here, but basically there'll be the full width of the planks that are going lengthways. And then the edge planks will stretch the full width. So these will be cut here and here. Yeah. So what I need to do anyway, regardless of that, is I need to square these up against something, this piece of wood or something else, and then run a track saw down that end and then back on this end. So square off this end, make sure all these ends are cut to the same length. I mean, they're pretty much right now, but this one isn't. And then I know that when the boards butt up against it, they will butt up against it perfectly, pretty much. And then we can turn these over, we can do spacers, and then we can start putting stuff together. Okay, I'm back. Bit of a gap between when the last video stopped. I have stuff to do. I need to basically die from my hay fever. I get really chronic hay fever. If you suffer with it, and you know, it's like someone's shoving a hot red poker up my nose, and it's really actually debilitating. But anyway, we can continue now. I'm still not great, as you can probably maybe hear from my nose, but at least I can work, do stuff. Where do we get to? I think these are done now. Now I've battled with my crappy track saw, probably for the last time, I think. So I need to do some spacers for these, space them out, and then cut the edge bits, I think. So it's the end of June now, and summer's still not arrived here, 2025. We've had more rain in June than, well, average is 50 millimetres, and we've had 120. No, we had more than that. That was 2 days ago. We did 120 millimetres of rain, so it's just crazy. There's no rush for the table, but I do want to get it finished. So let's continue. Okay, you've just seen what I've done, and the next section I've just had a pause. I like to pause in between sections and think, and even if it takes half an hour or something, because I'm not exactly a professional carpenter. I need to work through the next steps in my head so I know what I'm doing. Yeah, so I need to do these two end pieces, which are fine, but the main job next is to do the frame, the kind of the rim frame that's going to bring all these bits together. And my plan is to use a pocket hole jig, similar to how I built this table underneath, so that I can fix the frame. I used some treated timber I've got outside, but this was an offcut. Pocket hole jig to screw it down so that the screws are hidden on this side rather than screw it down from the top. And I just experimented by screwing that in to see how deep the screw goes, just to make sure it doesn't come through the other side, basically, because you can set the height of the pocket hole jig. I'm not going to use pocket hole screws, which makes it a little bit more difficult, but these are outdoor treated screws, so it's more appropriate for this table, which is going to sit outside. You just need to be a bit more careful with the impact driver when you're driving them in, because they can go too far. But anyway, there's some leeway there. I just checked it and it's fine. So next I need to cut those bits and do all the pocket hole screws for those. And then these aren't on tight, these cramps, are just really to stop that. So when I go past, I don't nudge it, and that's all they're on for, really. And I hope that the twists that are in the two outside bits I can take out once they're fixed to the frame. I think it'll be fine, he says. Okay, I'll just pause to explain what I'm doing and think it through in my head while I speak it through, make sure it's all right. Bit of a money cut job, I suppose. So I got the 4 legs in the corners, and I wanted them at this angle, or a angle, but not to protrude. I think this is the right way of doing it, not to protrude more than the frame. So they when they're cut, they'll be the same as the frame. And then to get the angle right, which is the same angle, to be fair, as I cut at the bottom, but the table should be 73 centimeters high. I understand from a friend of mine who's a maesters in, which is a like expert gardening carpenter expert in the village. 73 centimeters is the right height. I've not googled it. I just took his word for it. So that's what I'm going for. 73 centimeters. And so that's why I'd done this piece hanging down, but measured from the underside, the top, to that line is 73 centimeters. It doesn't need to be perfect, but everything needs to line up. So I've got the straight line there. I will pencil it off, and I've got the angle, so I can then chop saw it. And then to do the other end, I'm making sure that all the table is level. This bends a little bit, that's why they're under there. Make sure everything's level, and then I'll span a piece of wood from that to there, and then I know that these are the same height as these. The 73 bit doesn't matter so much as long as they're all the same height. And then we'll span. I can't remember what I put in the design now, but I decided that I'm going to span a piece across the middle. And whether I span a bit down the middle there, I don't know. We'll see. Probably end up will, I guess. We'll see how wobbly it is or whatever. There are some other challenges to overcome on the way, like how I fix everything to the table. But the idea is that the table legs will come off as units. So you can take the legs off with this bit. So we could store it away in winter, kind of thing. And also it's easy for carrying. But that's the idea. Should get my angles then and everything flat. Forget all that. I realised afterwards that's why we talked things through. There's a much easier way. All I need to do is simply measure from the bottom of here to the top of here in each corner, and we've got exactly the right measurement. So much easier, so much less faff.
Okay, so editing me here, and I realised when I was editing that I'd lost a little footage between the part where I finished this and I need to fix the cross beams to the legs, and then the part here where I need to drill the pilot holes so I know exactly where to drill the holes for the recessed nuts. But it's a very simple process. So that what you do is you simply put the legs in place, and then that foot plate you drill through that into what is effectively the top of the table I'm drilling into now, and then you get the pilot hole, and you know that when you then put the threaded rod in later on, it would all line up, no problem at all.
Okay, so there it goes, finished ish. You know, it's good enough to, there's a few imperfections that I'd like to kind of iron out a bit, sand out maybe, or adjust, but other, you know, it's a functional table now. And we've got a big party of guests coming at the weekend, so they'll be using it and testing it out and giving me feedback, I'm sure. But you know, essentially it works as a table and it looks really nice, I think, on the deck there. Works. Let's take a closer look, shall we? Yeah. Unfortunately, the chairs don't go underneath, but then that doesn't matter because I'm making benches for it. That's the next step, really. So I'm not too bothered about that. But they're just sort of temporary chairs. If I was honest, the only thing I need to add is some extra strips underneath because these boards ping up a little bit, or a couple of them do. And screwing them down, there's the leg is there if you can see it. The leg board is there, and then one more board here. So the leg board still can come off across there. Screw down, we'll pull those down. So that's all that needs to be done, really. It was a bit difficult because I was working through the whole table upside down. I didn't realise that till I turned the other way. But there you go. And there's these end. It's just, that's wood for you. That's wood for you. It moves. But other than that, I'm pleased with it. I think it looks. I'm really pleased with it as well. I think it works. Okay, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thumbs up if you did. Share it with your friends and your neighbours and your enemies. And I look forward to seeing you in another video very soon. Bye for now.